At the start of a new semester, Ethan Parker, a newly transferred black student, found himself facing hostility and humiliation from a group of classmates. Little did they know the strength he possessed. As he boarded the bus for the long ride to Brookfield, Illinois, Ethan gazed out the window, watching the city fade into the orderly sameness of the suburbs. This move felt different from the many he had experienced before. His mother had landed a better job, a genuine opportunity that she had worked tirelessly for. His uncle had encouraged him to view this as a fresh start, but Ethan was all too aware that fresh starts were often a facade for kids like him, especially in places where judgments were made before a single word was spoken. The moment he set foot on Brookfield High's campus, Ethan could sense the undercurrents of disapproval. Subtle hesitations in conversations, quick glances that darted away the moment he looked back. The teachers greeted him with overly polite smiles, their voices carefully measured, as if they were trying too hard not to say the wrong thing. He had been here before, in various towns, always feeling like an outsider. As the first few class periods passed quietly, Ethan focused on his work. However, by lunchtime, he felt the weight of being scrutinized, as if he were under a microscope. The cafeteria was a landscape of unspoken rules, where tables were claimed territories, defined by body language and familiarity. Scanning the room, he noticed how most groups were entrenched in their conversations, excluding newcomers. Finally, he spotted an empty seat next to a kid who was too absorbed in his phone to notice. It wasn't ideal, but it would suffice. Barely settling his tray down, a voice pierced through the ambient noise. "Lost. Are you?" Ethan turned, already aware of the speaker before he even laid eyes on him. The boy was Ryan, with his blonde hair and blue eyes, exuding the effortless confidence of someone who had never questioned his place in the world. A casual smirk adorned Ryan's face, but the amusement in his eyes was anything but friendly. Around him a few friends were watching, their interest evident. Ethan took a deep breath, steadying himself. "Didn't realize I needed a map." Ryan chuckled, shaking his head. "Just checking, not many new faces around here." His words seemed innocent, yet the implication hung heavy in the air. Ethan understood it all too well. "Guess I'm the exception." Ryan's smirk widened, but something flickered behind it. Curiosity, or perhaps something sharper. "Welcome to Brookfield, man." Ethan said nothing. He picked up his fork and began eating, fully aware that this interaction was far from over. At first it manifested in whispers loud enough for him to hear. "Didn't know they allowed guys like him here. Wonder how long he'll last." This was nothing new to him. He chose to ignore it, to blend in, to make himself small. But Ryan Callaway was not the type to let things slide. He carried his privilege like armor, a shield against consequences. And for reasons unknown to Ethan, he had deemed Ethan's presence at Brookfield a problem. As the days progressed, Ethan faced more than just careless remarks. He encountered physical confrontations. The first test came at his locker, when a sudden shove sent him crashing against the cold metal. "Oops," Ryan feigned innocence, a smile stretching across his face. Ethan inhaled deeply, maintaining control over his emotions. "You're quiet, huh? That's cool," Ryan said, his tone patronizing. Ethan turned to face him, not angry or frightened, just resolute. For a fleeting moment, Ryan's confidence wavered, but the jeering comments from his friends quickly restored it. "Catch you later, new guy." That was just the beginning. The tension that enveloped Brookfield High was palpable, and Ethan was determined to find his footing. As the story unfolds, join us on this journey of resilience and self-discovery. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below, and stay tuned for more from Flourishing Tales. Ethan Parker's first day at Brookfield High was filled with the usual mix of anxiety and anticipation that came with being the new kid. The morning passed without incident, as he focused intently on his classes, trying to absorb as much as possible. Yet, the moment lunchtime arrived, the atmosphere shifted. The cafeteria was a cacophony of noise and energy, but for Ethan, it felt more like a battlefield. He stepped into the bustling room, scanning the sea of students who were either deeply engrossed in conversations or laughing with friends. Ethan felt the weight of invisible boundaries that marked the territories of various cliques. He knew all too well that the unspoken rules of high school could be merciless. Hesitation gripped him as he approached a table that appeared less crowded. There was an empty seat beside a kid who seemed preoccupied with his phone, oblivious to the world around him. As Ethan made his way to the table, he could feel eyes tracking him, their gazes heavy with judgment. Just as he set his tray down, a voice cut through the laughter and chatter. "You lost, huh?" Turning to face the source, Ethan found himself looking at Ryan Callaway, the blonde-haired boy who had already established himself as a dominant presence in the school. Ryan's smirk was casual, but the disdain lurking beneath it was palpable. Surrounding him were a few friends, their eyes glinting with interest, eager to see how this encounter would unfold. Ethan took a slow, deliberate breath, ready to stand his ground. Didn't realize I needed a map. Ryan chuckled, his laughter dripping with sarcasm. Just making sure, not a lot of new faces around here. The implications of his words were clear, and Ethan felt a surge of anger rising within him. He was no stranger to being an outsider. He had faced it before in different towns and schools. Guess I'm the exception, he replied coolly, trying to deflect Ryan's attempt to provoke him. As Ethan resumed eating, he sensed that this was just the beginning. Whispers began to circulate like wildfire throughout the cafeteria, deliberately loud enough for him to catch snippets of their conversations. Didn't know they let guys like him in here. Wonder how long he'll last. He clenched his jaw, reminding himself to stay focused and not give them the satisfaction of a reaction. But Ryan was relentless. His friends, emboldened by their leader's bravado, joined in. The tension escalated when Ethan found himself at his locker later that day. While he was busy switching out his books, Ryan appeared again, this time with more aggression. A sudden shove sent Ethan stumbling forward, his shoulders slamming into the metal locker. Oops, Ryan feigned innocence once more, but the mocking laughter from his friends cut through the hallway noise. Ethan took a deep breath, trying to maintain his composure. He grabbed his notebook and shut his locker, refusing to give them the satisfaction of showing any weakness. You're quiet, huh? That's cool, real cool, Ryan continued, his tone dripping with condescension. Ethan simply looked at him, his expression steady. For a moment he saw a flicker of uncertainty in Ryan's eyes, but it was quickly replaced by a confident smirk as one of his friends muttered something derogatory under his breath. Catch you later, new guy, Ryan sneered, strutting away with his crew in tow, laughter trailing behind them. Ethan's heart raced, but he reminded himself of the advice his uncle had given him. A lion doesn't flinch when a hyena barks. He brushed off the incident, but deep down he knew this was only the beginning. The next day during lunch, the atmosphere remained tense, and Ethan prepared himself for whatever was to come. As the story unfolds, witness how Ethan navigates the complexities of high school dynamics, and stands up to the challenges ahead. If you're enjoying this journey, don't hesitate to share your thoughts in the comments, and stay tuned for more from Changeweavers. As the days turned into weeks, Ethan Parker found himself increasingly entangled in the web of bullying, orchestrated by Ryan Callaway and his friends. Each encounter felt like a battle, with Ethan determined to hold his ground despite the relentless taunts and jabs. The whispers that followed him through the halls were like a shadow that refused to leave. It seemed that every student at Brookfield High had an opinion about the new kid, the black kid who had dared to take a stand. The tipping point arrived one afternoon after school. Ethan had stayed late in the library, trying to focus on his studies and escape the tension of the cafeteria. The parking lot was mostly empty when he finally stepped outside, the crisp air a welcome relief from the stuffy confines of the building. But as he walked toward his car, he could feel the familiar presence of Ryan lurking nearby. Hey, new guy, Ryan's voice called out, slicing through the quiet. Ethan turned to face him, fully aware that this was not going to be a friendly exchange. Ryan stood with his arms crossed, flanked by a couple of his loyal followers, their laughter echoing in the stillness. Before Ethan could respond, Ryan hurled a drink at him, the soda splattering across his hoodie. Laughter erupted from Ryan's group as they watched Ethan's expression shift from surprise to anger. Oops, my bad, Ryan feigned innocence, but the amusement in his eyes betrayed his true intentions. Ethan glanced down at his ruined hoodie, the cold soda soaking into the fabric. He felt the familiar pressure building, but this time, he was determined not to let it overwhelm him. Instead of reacting, he took a deep breath and began to walk past Ryan, refusing to give him the satisfaction of a response. Ryan, however, had other plans. He stepped in front of Ethan, blocking his path. What? You scared? He taunted, his smug grin widening as he leaned closer. The tension in the air thickened, and Ethan could feel his heart racing, but he knew he couldn't back down now. Just tired of your games, Ethan replied evenly, meeting Ryan's gaze with resolve. A moment of silence stretched between them, heavy with anticipation. It was as if time had paused, and the world around them faded away, as they stood face to face, the challenge hanging in the air. Ryan's friends urged him on, their laughter ringing in Ethan's ears. Come on, man, don't let him walk away, one of them shouted. The crowd that had gathered began to murmur, their eyes darting between the two boys, eager for a confrontation. In an instant, Ryan shoved Ethan hard, sending him staggering back a step. The crowd gasped, and a rush of adrenaline coursed through Ethan's veins. He felt a fire ignite within him, fueled by the humiliation and anger he had endured for far too long. This was it. He could either walk away and continue to be a target, or he could stand up for himself once and for all. Ethan made his choice. With a swift movement, he dropped his backpack to the ground and rolled his shoulders back, ready to confront Ryan. "This ends now," he said firmly, determination lacing his voice. Ryan's expression shifted from surprise to excitement, as he realized Ethan was not going to back down. "Oh, you finally want to fight," he sneered, stepping closer. Ethan moved first, feigning to the left before delivering a powerful right hook that connected with Ryan's ribs. The sound of the impact echoed through the parking lot, and Ryan gasped, doubling over in shock. The laughter from his friends turned to silence as they watched their leader topple to the ground, stunned. Without missing a beat, Ethan pivoted and followed up with an uppercut, catching Ryan squarely on the chin. Ryan fell back hard, hitting the pavement with a thud. The crowd that had gathered stood in stunned silence, their eyes wide with disbelief. Ethan straightened up, his breath steady as he surveyed the scene. He could hear Ryan groaning on the ground, and for the first time he felt a sense of control over his own narrative. "Anyone else?" he called out to the onlookers, his voice steady and unwavering. No one moved. Feeling a rush of adrenaline, Ethan picked up his backpack and walked away, leaving behind the echoes of the confrontation. As he made his way home, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted within him. The battle might have been won, but the war was far from over. Join us as Ethan continues to navigate the complexities of high school life and the challenges that lie ahead. Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments below, and keep an eye out for more stories from Changeweavers. The days following Ethan Parker's confrontation with Ryan Callaway were a whirlwind of mixed emotions. The fight had spread throughout Brookfield High like wildfire, and suddenly, Ethan was at the center of attention. Whispers followed him in the hallways. Eyes that had previously glanced away now lingered with curiosity, awe, and even respect. The cafeteria, once a place of tension and anxiety for him, had transformed into a space charged with energy. As Ethan walked through the lunchroom, he could feel the weight of new expectations. Some students nodded in acknowledgement, their expressions shifting from indifference to admiration. "Did you hear what happened to Ryan?" one freshman whispered to another. "Yeah, man, he got knocked out cold," another chimed in. "The new guy's a beast." Despite the rising admiration, there was an undercurrent of skepticism as well. Ethan caught snippets of conversations that made his stomach churn. A group of girls at a nearby table giggled and muttered, "He's just another violent thug," their words slicing through the newfound respect he had garnered. Ethan turned slightly, meeting the gaze of one girl, with perfectly styled hair and expensive jewelry. She looked away quickly, as if ashamed to have been caught, but the sting of her words lingered. Ethan's heart sank. He had hoped that after standing up for himself, he would be seen as more than just a fighter. It was frustrating to realize that no matter how justified his actions had been, there were always those who would reduce him to a stereotype. He tried to shake off the negativity, reminding himself that not everyone would see him through that lens, but it was hard to ignore. That Friday, Coach Harrison called him into his office after school. Ethan hesitated, unsure of what to expect. The coach had a reputation for being straightforward and didn't sugarcoat his words. As they stepped into the office, the walls lined with trophies and team photos seemed to close in on him. "I heard about the fight, Ethan," Coach said, crossing his arms and leaning back in his chair. His expression was serious, but there was a glimmer of understanding in his eyes. "I figured you had your reasons." Ethan shrugged, unsure of how to respond. "I just couldn't take it anymore," he finally said, his voice low. "I didn't want to be pushed around." Coach nodded. "You're a fighter. That much is clear. But let me ask you something. Did that fight really change anything?" Ethan furrowed his brow, contemplating the question. "I don't know. People respect me now, but I didn't want to be known for just that." "Respect and fear often walk a fine line," Coach replied, his tone thoughtful. "You proved that you're not someone to mess with. But you need to think about what kind of reputation you want to build here." Ethan ran a hand through his hair, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on him. "I don't want to be just another guy who fights. I want to be more than that." "Then you need to channel that energy into something constructive," Coach suggested. "Have you ever thought about joining the wrestling team? You've got the skills. It's a way to learn control and discipline." Ethan's eyes widened in surprise. Wrestling was a completely different arena. But as he thought about it, a spark of interest ignited within him. "Wrestling? I've never really considered it," he admitted. "Look, Ethan," Coach said, leaning forward. "There's a difference between winning a fight and learning how to own your power. You've shown you can defend yourself. Now show that there's more to you than just being tough." That night, as Ethan sat on the edge of his bed, he stared at his uncle's old boxing gloves resting beside him. Memories of the fight replayed in his mind, mixed with the coach's words. He had spent years training and walking away from unnecessary confrontations. But now he felt a longing to redefine what strength meant to him. It wasn't just about fighting, it was about knowing when to fight and why. As the weekend approached, Ethan made a decision. He would try out for the wrestling team. No matter what others said or thought, he wanted to take control of his journey and prove that he could be more than just a fighter. Stay tuned as Ethan embarks on this new chapter and faces the challenges that lie ahead. Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments, and join us for more inspiring stories from change weavers. As the new week began, Ethan Parker felt a mix of excitement and apprehension coursing through him. He had made the decision to join the wrestling team, a choice that felt both empowering and daunting. The prospect of stepping onto the mat was a departure from his past experiences, but he was eager to discover how this new path could shape not only his reputation, but also his identity. On the first day of practice, Ethan arrived at the gym, his heart racing with anticipation. The familiar sounds of voices and the thud of bodies hitting mats filled the air. He stepped inside, taking in the sight of wrestlers grappling with one another, their movements fluid and precise. Coach Harrison greeted him with an encouraging nod, and Ethan felt a sense of belonging wash over him. "Glad to see you made it, Ethan," Coach said, as he motioned for him to join the team. "Let's get you warmed up and show you the ropes." Ethan followed the coach's lead, participating in stretches and drills. He felt the tension in his muscles ease as he engaged in the rhythm of the practice. The physicality of wrestling was different from boxing. It required a different kind of strategy, one that involved leveraging strength and balance rather than simply relying on punches. Ethan was intrigued by the intricacies of the sport, and he caught on quickly, impressing Coach with his natural aptitude. As the days progressed, Ethan found himself growing more confident in his abilities. The camaraderie among the team members was palpable, and he appreciated the support they offered each other. Unlike his previous experiences in the cafeteria, where whispers of judgment often echoed in his ears, here, he felt accepted for who he was, not just for the fight he had won. However, the shadows of his past still lingered. Despite the positive changes, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling of pressure. The whispers and rumors hadn't completely dissipated. Some students still regarded him with a mix of admiration and fear, unsure of how to approach him now that he was on the wrestling team. They were curious about the new dynamic he was creating, and the attention was both flattering and overwhelming. One afternoon, after a particularly grueling practice, Ethan found himself sitting on the bleachers, catching his breath. He overheard a group of students discussing the upcoming wrestling match against a rival school. "I heard Ethan's going to be in it," one student remarked. "Do you think he can handle the pressure?" The comment hung in the air, and Ethan's stomach tightened. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore, he was representing the team, and the thought of letting them down weighed heavily on him. Coach Harrison approached, sensing Ethan's unease. "You all right?" he asked, taking a seat beside him. Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I just don't want to mess this up. Everyone's counting on me now." Coach nodded, his expression serious yet understanding. "Listen, pressure can be a double-edged sword. It can either push you to succeed, or weigh you down. You have to find a way to channel it into your performance. Remember, it's not just about winning, it's about showing up and giving it your all." Those words resonated with Ethan. He understood that his journey was not solely about fighting, but also about personal growth and resilience. He wanted to prove to himself that he could thrive in this new environment, regardless of the challenges that lay ahead. As the match day approached, Ethan trained harder than ever. He practiced his moves, focusing on technique and strategy. His teammates rallied around him, offering advice and encouragement. The night before the match, he lay in bed, replaying the coach's words in his mind. He was ready to embrace this opportunity, to show everyone, including himself, that he was more than just a fighter. He was an athlete, with potential. The day of the match arrived, and as Ethan stood at the edge of the mat, he felt a surge of determination. The crowd buzzed with excitement, and he could see familiar faces among the spectators. This was his moment to shine, to prove that he had transformed not just physically, but mentally as well. Stay tuned as Ethan steps into the ring and faces the challenges ahead. Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments. Join us for more inspiring stories from change weavers. Monday morning arrived with an electric tension hanging in the air. Ethan Parker felt it immediately as he walked through the main entrance of Brookfield High. The usual morning chatter seemed muted, replaced by hushed whispers and furtive glances. He didn't need anyone to tell him what had changed. Ryan Callaway had returned to school. The news had spread quickly through text messages and social media over the weekend. Ryan, whose absence had been a relief for Ethan, was back with a vengeance. Though Ethan hadn't seen him yet, he could sense the shift in atmosphere, like the heavy stillness before a storm. Students clustered in small groups, their conversations dropping to whispers as he passed by, their eyes following him with anticipation. "Did you hear? Ryan's back," one freshman muttered to another, not realizing Ethan could hear them clearly. "I heard he's been planning something big." Ethan kept his expression neutral, refusing to show any concern. He had spent the weekend training with the wrestling team, finding a new sense of purpose in the disciplined movements and focused energy of the sport. Coach Harrison's words echoed in his mind. Real strength isn't about proving yourself to others, it's about knowing who you are. As he approached his locker, Ethan noticed that Ryan's friends weren't moving with their usual swagger. Instead of bumping into him or throwing casual insults, they kept their distance, their eyes wary, whether it was respect or fear or simply waiting for Ryan's lead. Ethan couldn't tell, but the change was unmistakable. By the time lunch rolled around, the cafeteria was buzzing with anticipation. Ethan entered cautiously, scanning the room until his eyes landed on Ryan, who sat surrounded by his usual entourage. The bruising on Ryan's face had faded, but the memory of their confrontation remained fresh in everyone's minds. Ethan made his way to an empty table, trying to ignore the weight of stares following him. He had just started eating when he sensed a presence approaching. Looking up, he found Ryan standing before him, his posture deliberately casual but his eyes sharp with calculation. "You feel good about yourself?" Ryan asked, his voice steady despite the underlying tension. The cafeteria had grown quieter, students leaning in to catch every word of the exchange. Ethan met his gaze evenly. "I feel fine." Ryan laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Yeah, I bet you do." He glanced around at the watching students before returning his attention to Ethan. "You think this is over?" "I think you should walk away," Ethan replied calmly, his hands resting on the table, steady and controlled. For a brief moment, something flickered across Ryan's face, perhaps surprise at Ethan's composure, or frustration that his intimidation tactics weren't working. Then his trademark smirk returned, though it seemed forced now. "We'll see," he said simply, before turning and walking back to his table, his friends watching with a mixture of confusion and anticipation. The encounter left Ethan with a sense of unease. Ryan hadn't thrown a punch or made a direct threat, but the implication was clear. This wasn't over. Ryan was planning something, biding his time, waiting for the right moment to strike back. Throughout the rest of the day, Ethan remained vigilant. He noticed Ryan watching him during passing periods, his expression unreadable. In gym class, Ryan made a show of discussing his weekend with his friends, loud enough for Ethan to hear fragments like "teach him a lesson" and "put him in his place." After school, Ethan found Coach Harrison in his office. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" he asked, leaning against the doorframe. Coach looked up from his paperwork, nodding. "What's on your mind, Parker?" "Ryan's back," Ethan said simply, "and I think he's planning something." Coach sighed, leaning back in his chair. "I figured as much. Kids like Ryan don't take losing well." He studied Ethan's face for a moment. "What are you going to do about it?" Ethan considered the question carefully. "I don't want another fight. That's not why I'm here." A small smile crossed Coach's face. "Good, because that's not who you are anymore. You're a wrestler now, with discipline and control. Remember that." As Ethan left the office, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. Whatever Ryan was planning, he would face it head on, not as the angry new kid looking for a fight, but as someone who had found a better way to channel his strength. What will happen when Ryan makes his move? Will Ethan maintain his newfound discipline, or will he be forced to defend himself once again? Follow along as the tension builds at Brookfield High. Share your predictions in the comments, and stay tuned for more from Changeweavers. The day of the wrestling match dawned bright and clear, but Ethan Parker felt a storm brewing inside him. As he prepared for the competition, nerves and excitement churned within him. This was not just any match, it was his first opportunity to showcase his skills in front of classmates, friends and the ever-watchful Ryan Callaway. The stakes felt higher than ever, and Ethan was determined to prove himself. Arriving at the gym, Ethan was greeted by the lively atmosphere of a typical match day. The air was thick with anticipation, as students filled the bleachers, their voices mingling into a cacophony of cheers and chatter. The wrestling mats were laid out, bright blue and inviting, contrasting sharply with the buzz of excitement in the room. As Ethan stepped inside, he could feel the weight of many eyes on him, including those of Ryan, who sat among his friends, a smirk plastered on his face. "Looks like the new kid's ready to show off," one of Ryan's friends whispered, but Ethan chose to ignore the comment. He focused on the task at hand. Coach Harrison approached, giving him a reassuring nod. "Just remember what we practiced," he said. "Control and technique are your allies. You've got this." As the matches began, Ethan watched intently, studying the strategies and techniques employed by his teammates. He felt a mix of admiration and camaraderie as he cheered them on, each victory fueling his own determination. Finally, it was time for his match. The announcer called his name, and the crowd erupted in cheers, some supportive, some skeptical. Ethan stepped onto the mat, facing his opponent, a stocky, confident wrestler named Jake from the rival school. As they shook hands, Ethan could see the glint of competition in Jake's eyes. This was not just a match, it was a challenge, a chance to assert himself. The referee blew the whistle, and the match began. The initial moments were intense. Jake charged forward, attempting to take Ethan down, but Ethan had prepared for this. He sidestepped and countered, leveraging his training in boxing to maintain balance while utilizing wrestling techniques. The crowd gasped as Ethan executed a swift takedown, bringing Jake to the mat. As the match progressed, Ethan felt the adrenaline coursing through his veins. He focused on maintaining control, remembering Coach Harrison's advice. With each move, he felt more comfortable, more in control. He maneuvered expertly, transitioning from holds to escapes. The audience was captivated, and Ethan could hear cheers of encouragement rising from the bleachers. But just as he felt he was gaining the upper hand, Jake caught him off guard with a sudden reversal. In an instant, Ethan found himself on the mat, struggling to escape Jake's grip. Panic surged within him, but he remembered the lessons he had learned, not just about wrestling, but about resilience. He took a deep breath, focusing on his training, and managed to shift his weight, breaking free from Jake's hold. With renewed determination, Ethan pushed himself back to his feet. The crowd roared, and for a moment, he could see Ryan's expression shift from smug confidence to surprise. Ethan seized the opportunity, launching into a series of aggressive moves that showcased his speed and agility. He executed a perfect pin, and the referee's hand slapped the mat, signaling the victory. The gym erupted in cheers as Ethan stood up, his heart racing with exhilaration. He had done it. He had not only won the match, but had proven to himself that he could rise to the occasion. As he looked around, he caught sight of Ryan, who wore a scowl that betrayed his frustration. Ethan's teammates rushed over, congratulating him with high fives and cheers. The feeling of camaraderie washed over him, reinforcing the sense of belonging he had found on the wrestling team. This victory was more than just a win. It was a statement that he was not just a fighter but a skilled athlete who had found his place. As he walked off the mat, Ethan felt a sense of pride swell within him. He had faced his fears, embraced the challenge, and emerged victorious. No matter what Ryan or anyone else thought, he had proven that he was more than his past. What lies ahead for Ethan as he navigates the complexities of high school life and rivalry? Stay tuned to witness his journey unfold. Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments, and join us for more inspiring stories from Changeweavers.